So, hi Muzaffar and Raj. So, let's start today's introduction part of ASP.NET. So, yesterday I gave introduction or theory part of that HTML. So, where I have explained how we can build one HTML page with the help of Visual Studio, and at the same time we have built our web page with the help of Notepad as well. So after that we moved the concept of HTML tags. So where I covered most important HTML tags which we are frequently using in our website development. Okay, so now this is time to move with ASP.NET. Okay, so as I already told you, there are a couple of web technologies in the market where we can work with the where we can work on develop the websites. So one of the technology what we have to build the website in .NET component is ASP.NET. So ASP.NET is a Microsoft web technology which can be useful to develop the websites or web applications. There is a slight difference between the website and web application. In later point of time, I can explain the concept. Okay, so let me give the kind of definition for the ASP.NET. Then we will see how we can work with the ASP.NET. So ASP.NET is nothing but a web technology which can be useful to develop the websites or web applications. So are you understanding? So
Yes,
ASP.NET,
Manoj.
if someone asks about what is the ASP.NET, it's not a language. So we can't say it is a language here. So what we can say about the ASP.NET is ASP.NET is a web technology which can be useful to develop the websites or web application. Websites are web application. There is a slight difference between the websites and web applications that I will explain in the later point of time. While we started working with the ASP.NET, then I can explain the concept. So because even if I try to explain the concept, it will not clear for you. Okay, so
Okay.
this is about ASP.NET introduction. So I told you in HTML also we can write our JavaScript code or jQuery code or AngularJS code in between the script tag or in .js files, right? So yesterday I told you,
Yes.
yesterday I told you. So even we can build the dynamic website with the help of HTML by writing the JavaScript code or jQuery code or AngularJS code in between the script tag of the HTML, or we can link the .js files into our website. So that's where we can dynamic our HTML pages as well. Okay, but the problem with that particular thing is there is no code separation between the ASP, sorry, there is no code separation between the front end page code and the back end code. So what I mean to say is, so presentation layer and business layer is not separated in that particular part. So let me give an example. So here, so this is our example. Let's close this. So yesterday what we have seen is we have so, so yesterday what we have seen is we have seen the concept of HTML. There I have explained the concept of script, and in that script we can write whatever the code we want. So whatever the JavaScript code or whatever the jQuery code we want to write, we can write it. Okay. So the problem here is see, whatever the code we have write in the body section of the particular HTML page, that will be reflected into our web page. So let's run this page here. So once we click on this browse option, so we can able to see the header, and we have able to see the header, and at the same time we can able to see the numbering of our list items. Okay, so so this part we can call it as a presentation layer, and whatever the business logic we want to write means to interact with the database or to apply some kind of calculations while rendering the data, that all code, if we use the HTML, we can write that code here itself. So what I mean to say here is if we want to work with the HTML along with the particular scripting language like JavaScript, jQuery and AngularJS, how I can build that thing is I need to build that business logic with the language, and at the same time whatever the presentation layer what we have, that also will be in the same page only. So there is no code separation between presentation layer and the business layer. Okay, there is no code separation between the presentation layer and business layer. So what does it? There are couple of advantages and disadvantages of the code separation. So means if I separate the code from the presentation layer, it will easy for the guy to understand. So we can eliminate, we can place all our business logic code in separate file, and we can place all our presentation logic in the particular HTML page. Okay, so that's where we can separate the thing. So that kind of code separation we have in our ASP.NET, but that's not in the HTML pages. So the code separation feature which is not available in the ASP, so which is not available in HTML, that will possible to apply in the ASP.NET. So that is one thing. And other thing what we can say is whatever the code we write in the HTML, or whatever the business logic we write in the HTML page, that will be rendered in the browser client browser itself. That will be run in the client browser itself. Okay, so that means if I write the code in the HTML page itself by using the any client-side scripting languages like jQuery, JavaScript or AngularJS, those will execute in the client side itself. It will not hit in the server side. It will execute in the client side itself. Means there is a burden to run that application in the client machine, not in the server. Okay,
Okay.
so that is the another difference. So I have covered three concepts here. One is code separation, and second one is this client side scripting. So that means HTML is a client side technology, whereas this ASP.NET is a server side technology. Okay, so I will tell you what is the difference between that client side technology and the server side technology. So let me give the kind of pictorial representation here so that we can understand. So this is all the HTML request and the response. So this is the where we can work with the ASP.NET or when any other web technologies. So how the request and response process will work in the internet is so here I am the client. I am sit in front of the my system, and I am trying to execute. I am trying to get the sample.html page. Then if whenever if I click on enter button by entering that particular URL, one request will go to the server. one request will go to the server. And if the requested page is available in the server, then that server will respond that request as a HTTP format. That server will respond to the particular client request in the form of HTML. And whatever the browser here we are using to render that HTML, that will be displayed here. That will be displayed. This is the request and response process. One complete request and response is called as a round trip. One complete request and response is called as a round trip. So let me repeat again. If I know the any kind of web URL like google.com or msn.com or bing.com, so if I enter my URL like www.google.com, then if I press the enter button, one request will send to the server, and there it will verify whether the particular web page is available or not. If that if that particular web page is available, then that server will respond to that particular client request in the format of HTML. Then the browser, whatever the browser we have in our system, that will render that HTML as a web page. So this entire request and response process is called as a round trip. The entire
Okay.
request and response process is called as a round trip. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the request and response process happening background process of a website rendering. Okay. So this is the one thing. This is the ASP.NET execution page. So what I'm trying to explain is whenever we enter any URL in the client machine, and once we click on enter button, that request will go to the server, and in server that IIS, whatever the web server we are using, that web server will respond, if will verify whether the requested page available or not, and if that requested page are available, then it will send the response as a HTML format. That a web browser will read that HTML and render in the format of a web page. So this entire request and response process is called as a round trip. Okay. So this is how it will work here. So in first step, the client will enter the URL saying that www.aspx.com page, and that request will go to the IIS server, and in IIS it will verify. We have one DLL which is called as is API DLL, and it will verify whether that particular page is available or not. If that particular page is available, then it will identify that page, and that will compile in the format of MSIL. That MSIL will understand the CLR, and CLR will get execute that particular one, and again that will go to the IIS, and that IIS will respond to the request in the format of HTML page. So this is called as ASP.NET execution flow. So this is called as ASP.NET execution flow here. Okay. So we need to understand the particular terms while working with the ASP.NET. So whatever the form we are creating is called as a web form in ASP.NET. Whatever the form we are going to create in our ASP.NET will be called as a web form, and whatever the control like button, label, drop down, radio button, or checkbox, whatever the controls we are using in the ASP.NET, those will be called as the web controls. Okay, and whatever the code we are writing to perform the database operation or business logic, that will be called as a code behind page. and whatever the configuration settings we have throughout the application, that we will store in the format of web.config file. Okay, whatever the machine level configuration available in the particular ASP.NET, those all will be stored in the particular machine.config file. Okay, and at the same time, in order to handle the particular application event, we have one file which is called as global.asax page. Global.asax page. Let me repeat again. So, in order to start working with the ASP.NET, we need to understand couple of terms which we are frequently using in our ASP.NET. So whatever the pages we are using in ASP.NET, those pages are called as web forms. Okay, so in HTML we create the HTML, right? So if we create the same page in the ASP.NET, we will call that as a web form. Okay, in that web form, whatever the code, whatever the control we are placing, that will be called as a web control. And whatever the code we are writing in the to get the database information, to apply some kind of business logic, those will be called as the code behind page. And whatever the web level security we want to handle, those are all will be stored in the format of web.config file. Whatever all machine level settings or overall system level settings we have, those will be stored under the machine.config file. Okay. At the same time, in order to handle the application events or session events, we have one page which is called as global.asax page. That will be useful to handle the application level events. These are the basic terms which we need to understand while working with the ASP.NET. So let's see how we can start working with the ASP.NET. So yesterday what we have seen is, so we have created a project by selecting the file option and the new and the project. File option, new and the project. So previously we used to work with the C sharp, and where we were selecting page name as console application. Now as we are moving to the ASP.NET development, what we need to select here is we need to select the web. Once we select the web, here it will list out the option as ASP.NET web application. So here you need to give the name of your web application, and once we are done with the name for our web application, we can click on OK button to create the particular ASP.NET application. Okay, so here we do have a couple of options where we want to develop the web forms, or where we want to develop the ASP.NET web forms or web API, single page application or Facebook application, like this. So currently what we are focusing on for our demonstration is empty application I'm going to take here. Once I select the empty application, what I can do is I'm going to click on OK button. So I'm going to click on OK button. So once it is done, so if I go and see my project, so whatever the things I have covered in this particular part, we can able to see all the things in our ASP.NET. Let's see one by one. So here we are able to see the web.config, right? So we are able to see the web.config. So what is the use of this web.config is, for my application, if I want to configure something for my entire application, I want to do some kind of configuration settings. So saying that go and use the sessions for our application. Go and use the authorization or authentication for our application. That all I can write, that all piece of code we can write in the web.config file. that all code we can write under the web.config file. Let me repeat again. So in any kind of application, for example, banking application or any kind of security application. So if once we able to log in that particular application, if you keep idle for that particular amount of time, say 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and when you are trying to select the particular option after 20 minutes of time, it will say your web page got expired or your session got expired. So that kind of message we are getting. So how we are getting that kind of message is here we are setting up one component, one section saying that session management. So we can write that how much time we can give for a session. So that session time techniques are authorization techniques or authentication techniques. If we want to implement for our application, that code we can write in this particular format. So within the web.config file. So what is the web.config file here is this is the configuration file which is useful throughout the application. So if I write something here, that will be commonly apply for all my pages in my web application. So did you understand?
Yes, man.
So
What
basically
are
what
the
basically what I'm trying to say for this web config file is I want to do 100 configurations which is same for my all the pages. Okay, so that kind of implementation we can able to save in the web.config file. So here we are saying that system.web compilation debug and .NET framework is 4.5. That means whatever the pages we are going to add in this particular web page, all pages will go and use the .NET framework 4.5 only. Okay. So similarly, if we want to add some kind of session management, or if I want to add some kind of authorization or authentication for my application, which is same for the all the pages of the particular web application, then I can write that code in the format in this page itself. Okay. So that is the use of web.config file. And the other thing what I mentioned here is the web form. Let's see what is the web form here. So let's go to the solution again. Right click on that particular project and go to the add option and select the new option, new item, and select the web form. Okay. Once you select the web form, so previously in last example what we have seen is a HTML page. While we select the HTML page, we have seen the extension for that HTML page is .html. Okay, the extension for the HTML page is the .html. Okay, whereas if you select the web form, we have the extension called as the ASPX. So I told you previously Microsoft having one technology, one web technology which is called as the ASP. Okay, so they
yeah.
added the X for that extension. Means in terms of Microsoft perspective, X in the sense extension. Extension means
Yeah.
advanced for the previous one. So that's where they have provided the extension as a .aspx. X in the sense extension for the previous ASP. Previously, they have one application, one web technology, which was called as ASP. Now we are calling it as ASP.NET. So as we are calling it as ASP.NET, ASP.NET is the extension for the ASP. So that's where they gave the ASPX. X means extension. So in terms of Microsoft perspective, they felt like So as they are going to extend the functionality of the ASP in terms of ASP.NET, they gave the extension as a .aspx. Once I select this one and if I click on add button, that page is going to add to our application. That page is going to add to our application. See here, this is also a HTML form. So where we have the HTML tag or where we have the doc tag, where we have the HTML head tag, body tag, all things we have, right? So basically
Yes.
everything we have, whatever we have seen in the previous HTML session, all we can see here. Okay, but how we can say this is the ASP.NET page, and how we can say this is the extension for the HTML. So while doing that part, so here one thing what we can see is in order to work with the ASP.NET, all the controls in the ASP.NET will be basically will be called as a server side control. Means whatever the control means button control or text box control or radio button or drop down list, whatever we have, if we want to use that control into the ASP.NET, then what we can say, then those control are called as server side controls. Okay, so let me give the example here. So my example what I'm going to take here is input tag, which we are input type equal to button I am selecting. So value, what value I'm going to give is value equal to submit button or save button. Save button. Okay, this is the input button. And at the
Yep.
same time, so at the same time, this is the HTML tag what we usually call. Same thing if I want to write in the ASP.NET, what we can do is ASP colon button. Okay, and it need to write one thing which is called as run it server, and it need to have one ID for that, bt and save something like this, and it need to have text which is called as a save button. So in terms of this is the thing. Let me run this particular web page and see how it will work. I am running that particular web page. Is there any difference between this and this, Muzaffar or Ras here? Is there any difference between this and this? In terms of
Uh,
user perspective, is there any difference?
no, you have to study.
So in terms of user perspective, there is no difference between these two controls. Both are same only.
Yep.
Okay, but in terms of writing the code, we have a difference. In terms of writing the code, we have a difference. So how we are saying we have a difference here is this is the client side HTML control, which we are calling it as the element or tag. This is the server side control, which is belongs to the ASP.NET. This is belongs to the HTML, and this is belongs to the ASP.NET. So
I mentioned Madan bhai, client side means running on a user machine.
user machine. So whereas
Okay.
server ASP.NET run it server means whatever the code we are writing, that go and execute in the server machine. Server machine
Okay.
in the sense it is not executing in our machine. That
Okay.
operation is going to happen in the server side.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, how it will work is, say let's say Google as a application. So we are using the Google. Whenever we are typing www.google.com, we can able to see the page. So if they develop that particular Google with the ASP.NET, then whenever we request that one, that request will go to the particular IAS server where that particular Google got deployed, and from there we can get the result. And if someone click on login or something, so the code will execute in the server machine rather than the client machine. So that is called as server side technology. So if I have the ASP.NET, I can show you the difference here. So see, uh, if I click on here, is anything happening?
No.
If I click here,
Yeah, it is getting reloaded.
yeah, that is the difference between the client side and the server side. So if I click on the client side button, the execution part will execute in the client machine itself. It is not go and hit the server. But if I have the server side control, if I click on that, that request will go to the server, and once it is responded, that result will display again. Every time that post back will happen. Okay, so
Okay.
that is the difference between the server side and the client side technology. So client side technology, that execution process will be happen in the client machine. Okay, whereas server side technology, that execution process will be happen in the server side. So there are a couple of
Okay.
advantages and disadvantages. So both having their advantages and disadvantages. If you take the client side technology, there will be no burden to the server, and it will handle as many as requests. Okay, but if it is a server technology, if number of users are more to access it, who is trying to access my website, my server will get stuck.
Okay.
Okay, but at the same time, the disadvantage of this client side technology is if I write the client side technology, if I write some kind of scripting language to work with the database or some kind of business logic, if I disable the scripting in my particular machine, those will not execute and those will not work. Okay, so
Okay.
basically what I'm trying to say is, if we have an option here, if it is a Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, we have an option to disable the client-side scripts. In the browser
Okay.
level settings, we can able to do that one. If I do such kind of settings, what will happen is that code will never execute. Okay, and at the same time, if you take the server side technology, there is no such kind of possibility to go and disable the server, because
Okay.
that was there in some other machine, right? You don't have access for that. Okay, so that is the difference between the client side and server side, both having their own advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so even if you see, what we can do is, here we have a ASP.NET control. This is the ASP.NET control. Sorry, this is the HTML control, and this is the ASP.NET control. This is the ASP.NET control, HTML control and the ASP.NET control. Okay, so if I want to convert my HTML control into ASP.NET, simply what I can do is, I can simply add runNet equal to server.
Server.
So if I want to convert any HTML control as a server side control, the property which we need to add for that control is run at equal to server. Then it will become the server side control. Okay, so let's see the difference here. I'm going to run the page again. So still it is not executing. Run at equal to server even. Something we need to do. Here is save button. Save button here, and I'm going to execute. Oh, it is not executing here. Text only we have given. It's not executing. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm trying to explain here is to convert any kind of HTML tag to the ASP.NET. So what we can do is we can use the runnet server property to convert that particular HTML control into the ASP.NET control. So this is the one, and let's go to the this particular page. So we covered this web form, and the next important thing what we need to do is web control. So in ASP.NET page, once we have the ASP.NET, if you go to the toolbox here, if you click on the toolbox, we can see the list of all controls which is available in the ASP.NET. So we can see the list of all controls which are available in the ASP.NET for our website development. Okay, so we do have the button, we do have add rotator control and the bulleted list and the calendar, checkbox list and drop down list, file upload control, hidden field, that all we have seen in the ASP.NET as well. In ASP.NET input type checkbox, if I type, then checkbox we can able to get it. In in HTML, if you type the input type equal to button, we can get the button. Same control calendar we can have, and some kind of file upload control we do have input type equal to file. Okay, and we do have the image in the HTML as well. Image tag we have img tag, and we do have the label as well. For this link button, we have a anchor tag in HTML, and we do have the literal control and the radio button and the text box input type equal to text. If you place it, that will become the text box, and we have the table control as well. In HTML also we have the table control. So these are all controls we have. In addition of these standard controls, we do have some kind of other important controls which can work, which will give the more feasibility to work with the dynamic web applications, which will give the more feasibility to provide the to work with the dynamic web applications. So these are all the list of very useful controls available in the particular ASP.NET. Okay, so we do have the grid view, we do have the data list, we do have the chart, we do have some other data source controls as well, which can work easily with the database. For example, I have the bunch of data. I want to show all my users information in the format of a table, where I can provide the sorting option, where I can provide the paging option, where I can provide the like sort where I can provide the edit and delete options. That all if I want to provide, we can take the help of grid view control, or we can take the help of this data list control, or we can take the help of repeater control as well. So to perform such kind of operation, we can able to do all the things here. And we do have the validation controls. Validation control in the sense, if you see any kind of web pages, if I am trying to register myself in that particular web page, there is a form of registration. So where we can enter the first name, last name, and the date of birth, and the gender information, and the mobile number, and the email. Like that, we have the number of fields. Among all the fields, if I feel these are all the required fields which I need to get from the user, I can mark them as the required fields. For example, name, we need at any cost we need to get the name. Last name we may or may not interested to provide. That's not mandatory. Okay, so gender, that's not mandatory. So female or male, we are not bothering about that. So on date of birth, we are not bothering about that. Mobile number or phone, mobile number or email. So either one is mandatory. For example, if we want to mandatory with the email, we can mandatory that particular field. Okay, that are kind of validation. See here we have the couple of validator controls here. So if I feel for my particular control is a required field validator, okay, then what I can say is I can put my control as a required field validator. Then whenever user trying to skip that particular field without entering the value, it will pop up a message saying that these are all required field.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So how we can implement that one? Using the validation control. Okay.
Okay.
So for example, we have a web page where we want to give the range, means range control. So for example, I ask a salary of a particular person, or for I ask a age of a particular person. If someone give the age of 200 or 300, which is unbelievable here, which is not possible here. That is not possible number or not expected number for the age. So if that particular case, we can provide the range here. From we can set a range. Age need to be between 0 to 130 or 140. So in that between that particular range only, user can provide any kind of value. Other than this, if someone provide minus 200 or minus 100, or someone provide 200, we will give a message saying that the range need to be between this and this. But for that particular operation, we do have the range validator control and compare validator. So basically, I have a form where I can ask the user to provide the password and the compare password, confirm password and the confirm password. Those two need to be matched before proceeding, right? If I give the my password as ABC, and when I ask for the user to confirm the password, if they try to enter the ABE or something like which is not matched, then we can display message to the end user saying that these two values are not matching. Okay, that kind of validation also, if we want to do for our web form, we can take the help of these validation controls. Okay, so this is the thing, and we do have the navigation controls as well. So what is this navigation controls is, if I want to develop any kind of navigation in the sense menu. For example, if you see, if I click on menu, I can able to see one expander button like this, where I can see new option, open, add source control, like all list of option I can able to see. And if someone mouse over this particular, and one more option we can, one more navigation we can able to see. This kind of thing, if we want to develop in our website, we can take the help of these controls. Navigation control, I can make use of menu control, I can make use of sitemap path control, I can make use of tree view control. Okay, so these are the navigation control which are available in our ASP.NET. And at the same time, so for example, I want to prepare the login page for my application, where user have the name and the email ID and the password. Okay, and it has the login button and it has the cancel button. So instead of taking the 5 controls, like two labels, two text boxes, and 2 buttons, 6 controls, instead of taking the 6 controls and write our own code. So ASP.NET itself will provide one option which is called as the login control. If I drag and drop this control, I can able to see the entire functionality of my login control. Let's see how it will work. Let's see how it will work here. So for example, if I drag and drop my control, login control, if I try to execute this one, what is this? Unrobust validation requires script. Unrobust. 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 Requires a script to resource mapping for check. Okay. So validation. What is the default? So where we can able to see our login control, where we have the username and password. So this type of predefined controls are available in the ASP.NET. We can simply drag and drop that control, or by writing the code itself, we can simply work with our login operation. So these are the controls useful for that particular operation here. Click on stop. And we do have the web part control, we do have the Ajax control that I will explain, and we do have the reporting controls, report viewer, and we do have still ASP.NET controls are available here, and at the same time we do have some kind of general controls. Okay, so here so where I go and explain these particular things is web control. So we have seen the web page. Web page is nothing but the ASP.NET page available in the ASP.NET development and web control. So what are the controls are available in the ASP.NET which are called as web controls. Basically, control is nothing but a class. Basically, control is nothing but a class. Here button is a class. Here this particular login is a class where we have the checkbox. For all ASP.NET controls, all belongs to a classes only. Okay, they have their own classes. They are predefinedly developed in the ASP.NET. Okay, so this is the thing. And one more thing, what I'm trying to explain for this ASP.NET is code separation. I said while working with the HTML, we used to write the code in the script tag, which is reside in the HTML page itself. HTML is used for presentation purpose, presentation logic purpose, whereas this script tags are used to perform some kind of business logic where we can interact with the database to get the information or to send the information. That kind of logic, if we want to write, we need to write that kind of logic in the script tags. In between the script tags, we can able to write that one. So in that HTML, presentation logic is in the same page. At the same time, this business logic also will be in the same page. Presentation logic and business logic will be in the same page only. Okay. So whereas in ASP.NET, for each and every ASP.NET, there will be two pages. For ASP.NET, for each and every ASP.NET web form, there will be two pages. So if you see here, we have a project where we have added the web form, webform.aspx. If I expand this one, I can able to see one more page which is called as aspx.cs, which is the class file or code behind file for this presentation logic. Okay, so this is the designer file where we never work on that particular file. So basically, for each and every web form, there will be a one code behind file. Let's see how it will look like. So this is how. So by seeing this, what we remember? By seeing
The
this,
namespace,
what we are remembering, C#.NET, right?
yeah, C sharp dot
So
namespace and
correct.
yeah.
So those are all belongs to the C sharp. So why ASP.NET is linked with the C sharp here is while selecting the template, if you go and see that project, we have select this web application under the C sharp node.
Oh, this
So
under class files.
under the C sharp node under the C sharp template, we select the web page here. So that's where it's showing as ASP.NET with C sharp. Okay, so if I select my ASP.NET application under the VB.NET, my code behind page will be the VB. Okay, so that's the difference here. Basically, why we are having this code behind file with the C# is while selecting our web application, we select our web application under the C# node only. So that's where we can see our C# code in the ASP.NET. So if we
Oh,
select that particular visual basic in the web page, we will see only VB.NET. Let's see that one as well. So I'm selecting this one and I'm click on OK button. So it's saying this empty. Click on OK. Okay, let's go and add any kind of web form. New item. Web form. Click on add and what happened here? Where is code behind file for this?
VB form is a code form. VB is one of the code type. You put C# one of the code type. VB.NET is one of the code type.
Correct, correct. VB.NET is one of the language, whereas C#.NET is one of the language. So that's where
Okay.
we are having this kind of difference. Let's go and use the ASP.NET form here. So which is a web
If
application.
if
Yeah,
for every project we'll be having a config file, right?
yes, correct.
Yep.
So in the configuration file only they will assign what all the environments, what all the endpoints should be added to the particular coding or something. What?
Yeah, that whatever the configuration settings we need. So that might be the endpoint, or that might be the security aspects, that might be
Okay.
the session aspect, which is common for each and every page. All will be written in the web.config file.
Okay. Okay.
So I have a few things which I want to commonly share to all my web pages. Then I need to represent that information in the web config file. So a simple
Okay.
example we can take. So in order to connect with the database, we usually write the SQL connections. So
Yeah,
means
SQL connection.
connections means we can write the connection string. So where we can specify the server name and database name, that all details we can able to specify. That details
Mm.
we can individually mention each and every page as well. Instead of mentioning that common functionality each and every page, if I place that connection string in the form of web config file, I can share that throughout the application. I no need to repeat each and every page. If one
So and
page,
that config file will be added to the project, right? For every each and every page in the project will be added the config file.
no, config file will be the common here. So
Okay.
for one web application, one config file only will be have, and we can add
Okay.
as many as web forms we want to add, so we can add it.
Mhm.
As many as web forms we want to add, we can add it. But one level of web application, we will be having only one web config file. Okay,
For
so
every for every for every application in project, for every project will be having one config file.
for every project, we can have one config file.
Okay, in that project, how many applications will be also same config file
Same
will be
config
coming for?
can be used. So here, let me add one more page here. So I'm going to add one more page. Add option, web form, add. Now we have two web forms. One is this one and second one is this one. For this one also this is common. For this one also this is common.
Okay.
So like this, I can add as many as web forms I want. So I can add 100 or 200. Those 200 web forms will commonly share the same web config file. If I
Okay,
put
web application. Wait, we have a solution is, see, the project name is web application is the project name.
correct.
What's the application name here? Web application is that application name or solution that is.
This is project.
Okay, that is project. Okay,
Yes.
in that in that we'll be having another solution file.
No, no. The hierarchy will be like this. So we have a solution where we can add any number of projects. Under the project, we can add any number of web forms. So the hierarchy is like this. We on top hierarchy we have a solution. For this solution, I can add many projects like this. New project, this one, and instead of this one, let's select this web, this one. Going to add empty. So now for my application, how many projects I have? For my solution, I have 2 projects.
Okay. For the
So
main is solution file. In solution, we can add how many projects we want.
yeah, for the solution, this is the higher level hierarchy. Solution is the higher level where we have a lower level as project. For a solution, we can add as many as projects. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For the project, we can add as many as web forms. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For this, we have the web config file is different. For this, we have one web application. This is will applicable only for this web config file, and this will applicable for only this one.
Okay.
So like this, we can add it here.
So, Madan bhai, web config file will help us to configure sessions, events.
Yes.
Can you give any example of it?
Yes, we can give the example, but this is the not right time, Muzaffar.
Okay,
So
okay, okay.
basically, the intention is for now what you can understand is web config file will be used for setting up the common configuration throughout the web application. So
Okay, so common properties.
common properties which we want to set for the entire web application, we can set in the web.config file. See, I'm saying that for my website, the compilation mode is debug only, and the target framework is 4.5. So which is the same for all my web pages. For this web page, the .NET framework is 4.5, and for another web page also .NET framework is 4.5. So instead of mentioning that thing in each and every page, we are commonly mentioning that in the web config file, which
Okay.
is common. So recently we added one more setting, app settings, add key, something like we have added. So instead of adding this one in each and every page, if we add like this, it is common for all the pages again. So something
Okay.
related which is needed for the all the pages, instead of add that thing in the each and every page, it's better to it's better to specify that information in the web.config file. It is better to specify that information in the web.config file. Okay. So that's the intention of this web.config file in the ASP.NET. So and coming to this particular code behind file. So I said code separation. In ASP, if you take the HTML page, the business logic and the presentation logic all will be written in the same HTML page. There we don't have the code separation. So there we don't have the code separation. In the ASP.NET, we have the complete code separation. Means whatever the logic I want to write to display the information, I can write in the HTML page, I can write in the HTML page, and whatever the logic I want to write to contact with the database, to get some information from the database, or to send some information to the database, that kind of operation or some kind of calculation I want to do in my application, all my logic I can write in the .cs file, aspx.cs file, which we are calling it as a code behind file. Code behind file. Presentation page is different here, and the code page is different. In presentation page, what we are writing? Only HTML code we are writing. In code behind file, what we are writing? Whatever the C# related code which will help to provide some kind of calculation, those we can write in the code behind file.
Okay.
So that's where we were able to separate the uh, two things here. Presentation layer we are able to separate. At the same time, code behind also we can able to separate. Okay.
Okay.
So how
This
we?
sorry,
Yes.
Madan, to interrupt.
Yes. Yes.
This web form dot aspx is just whatever we are doing like checkbox and other
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
a presentation part.
Yeah, that means presentation. Whatever we are displaying to the end user.
Okay.
For end user, whatever end user is able to see, that information we are present in the ASPX page. Okay.
Okay.
If someone click on the button, something need to do. So for
So that
example,
happens in .cs file.
.cs file. So I'm
Okay.
preparing one. I'm giving one simple example. So here we are preparing one registration form. Okay. So
Okay.
where we have first name, last name, gender, email, and the mobile number and address. That all fields we display. And if someone click on the register button, that data need to be saved in the database. Okay.
Yeah.
For that we need to write some code. That
Okay.
code we are going to write in the this page, which is the code behind page. That only the controls, whatever the button control, whatever the text box control, whatever the label control we have, that all we are just placing in the particular presentation form, which is the ASPX form.
Okay.
Okay. So how those two pages are linked here is, see here, we are linking those two pages on the header section. This is a very important section here. So in the webform 1.aspx page, we have one directive which is called as page directive, where we are mentioning some kind of property here. So language which we are using, C#, and auto event variable is true, which is by default is true only. And we have a code behind a property. We are mentioning that what is the name of the code behind file for this ASP. For this ASPX page, what will be the code behind file for this page? We are mentioning that waveform 1.aspx.cs is the code behind file. And from where it is inheriting? So web application 2.waveform. So if I remove this one, there will be no link between the AXPX page and the code behind page.
Okay.
So this is a very important property where we are using to link the presentation form and the code behind form. To provide the link between the presentation form and the code behind form, we are using this property, which is code behind property, where we are mentioning the name of the code behind file. What is the name of our code behind file? Waveform1.aspx.cs. Okay. So this is the very important thing which we need to
Yeah,
remember here.
one second. CS file means all the data information will be there or something.
So data information means code behind file. We can do anything. So for example, here I have I just place
One
yeah.
One second. I will show one thing. Explain from that I will understand neatly. Even Muzaffar also can understand real life project how it will be. I'll show one
No,
thing.
no, I will move to that particular thing, Raj. Don't hurry here. I will move you that particular thing. So basically, we will move that particular part at any cost. So I can give the example as well. So basically, what we can write in the code behind file is so let's take a simple example. I have a two buttons. For example, how I can write the code in the code behind file is I'm taking one ASP dot label. So let's take one particular example as tab tr here. Sorry, not here. Table we are defining. Under that we have the tr. Under that we have the td. I am placing td as ASP colon and what we can see is a label. Label I am placing as I am providing my label name as ID equal to LBL first number, and it is a runnet server property. Okay, this is the first label, and the text what we are providing is enter first name. LBL, so it's not LBL. So what I'm going to do is this is to your right. Here I am placing ASP colon text box. Here ID I am providing is TBX first number. First number, and for this, okay, this is, and we are running run at equal to server. So here we have first number, and this is TBX second number. Okay, I'm having TR ASP button. Some not equal to server. Okay, now here result. So here, go to this one. So basically the intention is, so let's run this one. Okay. Button for this button. Text equal to. So we have one. Stop it. So here, this is a scenario where we have two text boxes. I'm just asking the end user to enter the first number, and I'm asking the user to enter the second number, and we have a calculate sum button. So if someone enter the 10 here, and if someone enter the 10 here or 20 here, if they click on that particular calculate button, that result need to come and show below section. So this is the intention. So how we did same thing in the control application. So how we did this same thing in the control application is we ask the end user to enter the same number, and using the control.readLine method, we read that information and we pass that information to the method which is called as add method or sum method, which will calculate the two numbers and it will return the value. So that's what we did in the console application. When it comes to the ASP.NET, that will be a representation of web form. So in console, we don't see any text box, or we don't see any label, or we don't see any kind of buttons, or we don't see any kind of check boxes. Those are not available in the console application. When it comes to the web application, we can see all control related information. So accordingly, we need to write our code. So here the business logic is nothing but whatever the code we are writing for our requirement. Whatever the code we are writing for our requirement. If it is a calculation of sum, that is the business logic for this calculate method. If it is a addition, that will be the same. If it is a calculation of entire interest of a particular loan amount, that is the business logic for that application. If I have the logic to assume what are the monthly sales, or what are the quarterly sales, or what are the half-yearly sales, or what are the yearly sales available in that particular project, particular product, that calculation is a business logic for that particular application. So that term is a just a business logic based on our code that will be treated. Business logic is nothing but a piece of code which we are writing to achieve common functionality. It's not the common, which we can write common, which we can write piece of code which can be used to achieve some functionality. Okay, anything, that might be anything. If I write one line of code, that is a business logic for that application, for that particular functionality. If I write 200 lines of code, that is the business logic for that particular functionality. If I write 1,000 lines of code, that is the business logic for that particular functionality. So here that business logic is a common term where we can use based on our scenario or our situation. Okay, so here what in order to achieve this one, what I did is if someone entered 10 here, and if someone entered 20, if they click on calculate, here I show them as a 30, right? So this 10
Yes.
plus 10, we can able to see the sum as 20. For to achieve that common this functionality, where how we can write that code is like this. I took the table, and in first row I am placing the label as a first number. First row, first column. First row, first column, I am placing the label name as enter first number, and in first row, second column, I am placing one text box to receive the or to get the information from the end user, which is the text box. And the second row, first column, I am entering the end user to enter the second number. To catch that information, I placed one text box for them. And third row, first column, what I mentioned here is what I place here is I place a button with the name calculate sum. For this button, I added one method. Previously in C#, how we call a method based on the given name of a method, we used to call that method. Here in ASP.NET, to call that particular method, what we will do is we will we are calling that method with the click event. On click is the event where we are calling one method here. On click is the event. Whenever we write the on click method, in our code behind file, one function will automatically create. That function name is the button calculate underscore click. that same function name we are passing here. That same function name we are passing here. Then what will happen if someone click on that particular method, particular calculate button, this method will call. This method is placed in the code behind file. Here what I am trying to do is I am getting the text box tbx first number dot text, means whoever enter that particular value inside the text box first number, I am getting that number by writing this piece of code. And to get the second number, same piece of code I am writing here, tbx text second number dot text. Then what I'm trying to do here is I'm summing up those two values. This text box number dot text will return the string format. Text box number dot text will return the string format, whereas the text box second number text also will return the string format. To convert that string format into the integer number, we have a convert method. Convert.toString in C#. We are using that convert method to convert that string value into the integer value. And again this conversion for the text box too. But basically our LBL result means label result.text will take only string value again. So once I applied the summation here, again I am converting that particular integer number into the string format so that it can assign with the label here. That's what we can able to see as a 30. So this kind of code, if we write, this is the business logic what people will call. For our application, for our need, this is the business logic. So even if I write 100 lines of code or 200 lines of code, that same name only we can call it. There will be no difference here. Same name, business logic only we can call it. Based on the scenario, we will write our code. If we write, for example, if I have the functionality like here calculate multiplication, calculate division, or calculate subtraction, like this. If you place the 5 button, five functions we need to create here. That 5 function will be called it as business logic, right?
Okay.
So that's the where the difference is. Even if you take the any kind of project, the thing is same only. The concept is same. Based on our need, we are extending our code. That's it. Okay. So this is the point what I'm trying to explain. So basically, so how, what is it? Hello?
Yeah, how we have done this? Yes, yes.
No, what is your question?
How we are doing this convert to string to integer format this in the. Can you tell one more time this one?
No.
Yeah,
Basically,
this.
we have seen this thing in C#, right? Muzaffar. Basically, if I have the one particular string, and if I want to convert that string to the integer, what function we
Okay,
can
okay.
use? Convert.toInt
Convert to
or
yeah.
parse.toInt. Okay.
Okay.
So like that we have a conversion method. So basically our control tbx first number, which I placed in the tbx first number, where I gave the number for this. For this
Mm-hmm.
name, for this control, I gave a name as the tbx first number. Okay.
Okay.
So if I give as I gave a name as a tbx first number, if someone entered the value in that first text box, that will go and store in this name. Okay. To get that particular user entered name in code behind page, what we are writing is that particular name of the text box dot text. which will return the whatever the number the user entered. Whatever the number the user entered, that will return here. Okay, and at the same time, if someone enter some value in the second text box, to retrieve that information in the code behind file, we are writing this code: text box second number dot text. Text box second number dot text. If I haven't write these two conversion methods, if I apply the concatenate, if I apply the addition for this one and this one, as this is the string and this is the string, it will not the addition, it will be the concatenation. So let me show that thing as well. So let's try to remove this entire thing, or else let's keep this same thing here. So copy this. So let's stop this first. So text box number text plus. So this is what we are, if we write the code like this, let's see what will happen. So I'm entering 10, I'm entering 20 here, and let's calculate sum. So how it is coming the value?
Okay.
10, 20.
Concatenate.
It is concatenating, it is not summing up the values. So why it is summing, why it is concatenating? This is the string value, where whoever entered the value in the text box, that will be the string only. That will be treated as a string only. And if you write the same thing in the second text box, that will be treated in the string only. If I apply the plus between the two string format, it will concatenate. It will not sum it up. It will concatenate. To avoid that, so our need is we need a sum. We don't need the concatenation. We need sum here. To apply the sum, that need to be converted into the integer format. So for that, what we have written is convert dot to int that particular string. Convert dot to int that particular string. And again, this label dot text will only take the string value. Once summation is done, we are converting that into the string format to assign this value to the label here for the result. Okay, then we can able to see that thing here. So this is how. So basically, this is not my intention to explain this concept in the this example. But before explain this concept, I want you guys to understand the all the controls and how we can use that controls into the ASP.NET. Then we can do our examples as well. So if I immediately explain this concept, this is not the good way for me and for you as well. So the intention is first we need to know what are the controls are available and how we can use in the ASP.NET. Then we can go with the example that will be pretty good straightforward to understand. Okay.
Yep.
So, so as you guys are asking real-time example, I'm not sure what real-time you guys are expecting. So, but as I'm trying, if you follow with me, you can gain what I want to explain to you guys. So basically,
No,
at
no,
the
no. I'm not asking a real-time example. Just I have one real life one. Like if I show you, you can say, oh, this is the one we can understand in real life here. That's what I'm asking.
okay, I'm not sure that thing, Raj. Like, let me follow with my flow. So at the end, you
Okay,
will understand what you want to know. So basically,
okay.
the thing what you need to understand, I know that thing. So I came from all the things, right? So I know
Yeah,
like
I know. Yeah, yeah.
so I know like how I can explain the concept here. So let it be like this. So basically, my intention is if I explain the concept one by one, like if I make you user familiar and what are all controls are available here, and then if I explain the what is add rotator control and the what is checkbox control and what is the hyperlink control or image control and how we can use that one. So that all if I explain, then we can take the example and we can able to see that one. But right now we gone through one example itself. So this is not what I expected. So what I expected to explain the concept is I want you guys to familiar with all the controls which are available in the ASP.NET. Then we'll go with the examples.
Okay.
So this is the thing. So, but again, that logic is same term which it can be apply for everything. So basically, the business logic is nothing but what is the piece of code we are writing for our requirement. So that they gave the common name for that particular term. So everyone saying that as a business logic. Business logic is nothing but a piece of code which we are writing to achieve something. So it might be the one line code, it might be the two lines code, or it might be the 20,000 lines of code. So everything will call it as a business logic only, or that means the other terms which we are using in our words. So this is the one. So let's try to explain the concept. Demo. So go to the web form one. So here these are all controls are available in the particular ASP.NET. Let's go to the one by one control so that we can able to understand. So this yeah, let's check this again. So we have seen what are the web forms. Web form is nothing but the web page which we can create in the ASP.NET application. Web control is nothing but a class, okay, which is used to work in the ASP.NET web pages. And we do have the code behind the page which will be useful to write the business logic. To write
Okay.
any kind of a business logic, we are using the code behind file. The code behind file will help us to separate the presentation code to the business logic. So if you take the HTML example, where we used to write the presentation code also in the HTML page, and at the same time the business logic also we can write in the HTML page inside the script tag. Okay, there is a no code separation here. And later point of time, they also introduced one concept which is called as external what I can say external JavaScript pages. Means instead of writing the entire code in the particular script tag itself, they are started to write that thing in the .js file in a separate page, and whenever they want to use that one, they are linking that page into the HTML. That's where they have started. In ASP.NET application, what Microsoft did is they created one more page which is called as the code behind page to write the code in the separate to write the particular piece of code in the separate page, where we can have the difference between the presentation and the business logic here. And at the same time we have the web.config file. So this web.config file will help us to write the common configuration settings throughout the web application. Common configuration setting throughout the web application. Okay. So other thing is machine config file. So the machine config file is the higher level of web config file. The machine config file is the higher level of web config file. For whole machine, there will be only one machine config file. For entire system, there will be only one machine config file. For entire application, for entire system means for entire our desktop or laptop, there will be one config file which is called as machine config file. So how it will work is this is similarly like this. In machine config file, where all the kind of settings are listed down. In web config file, if you write, I will give the example here. So how that machine config and web config files will work is here in our application we have one web config file. So basically at the same time in our machine in particular folder, that means a .NET framework folder, there will be one page which is called as a machine.config file. The all settings whatever we are writing, the system.web compilation debug target framework is 4.5, http runtime target framework is 4.5, and the setting add key, this validation settings, that all will be listed down in the machine.config file. In webconfig file, if I change this to the some other 4.6 or 4.6.1, that machine config file will override here. If I haven't mentioned anything, the value will get from the machine config file. If I haven't mentioned anything here, the value will get from the machine config file. If I mentioned in the web config file, that setting will be override to the machine config file. So basically two things. We have the, so first thing what we can have is first thing here we have the machine config file, and the second thing what we have is web.config file. So first thing what we have is machine config file, and second thing we have web.config file. Assume that under machine config file we have settings like 1 to 200 settings we have. In machine config, in web config file, for the first setting I have write something here in my web config file. In first setting, in first setting I write something as for my understanding, like I just write it as A. Now what will happen is as the one value which is for this first setting, they have the value as something like B, but here I mentioned that as A. Now in machine config file, the B will be override as A, but it is not saved in the machine config file, but that value which we are referring in the web config file will become the A instead of B. Okay. At the same time, I have someone which is called as, for the second configuration, I have the C as a value. But in my web config file, for the second element, I haven't mentioned anything. So I haven't defined anything. Then where this value will get is from the machine config file, the second configuration setting will come and say as C only. There are two config files which are useful in our ASP.NET development. The machine config file is only one machine config file will be available throughout the throughout the system, but web config file we can have as many as for our each and every application. Okay, so how settings will be inherit here is in machine config file, if we have the 200 configuration settings, 200 those 200 configuration settings we may or may not use in the web config file. If I use that, the value will be override from the machine config file. If I haven't used that, whatever the values we have, same will be coming here. If you see here, for this we use that a target framework as 4.5. So assume that in the machine config file, they mentioned target framework as 4.6.1. The value will be override here. If I haven't mentioned this, then by default that will be the value which it is available in machine config file. If I mentioned in web config file, that will be override. If I haven't mentioned anything here, basically that will grab the information. Basically this web config file will grab the information from the machine config file. So that is the difference. So did you guys understand, or do you have any questions on this? Basically machine config and web config are two files. The web config is
Yes.
the lower version, whereas the machine config is the higher version. In machine config, Microsoft .NET Framework define the more than 200 or configuration settings. So those are all we may or may not use in our web config file. If you want to write your web config file with some of the configuration settings, then machine config values will be override. Override in the sense it is not directly go and override the particular machine config file settings. Internally, that values whatever they are getting from that particular machine config file will not get, and will going to use the whatever we mentioned here. Whatever we are mentioned, we can keep on using this particular .NET framework. If we haven't mentioned, whatever the things they mentioned in the machine config file, that will be useful here. So that is the thing with the web config and machine config file. So web config is the lower version of the machine config file. If something I have written here, those value will be override by the machine config values. If I haven't mentioned anything, that values will inheriting from the machine config file. So that is the thing. And
Okay.
other one what we have is global.asax. So for applications we do have that global.asax, but that will be the available in the but if you take the particular project type, we can able to see that global.asax, but that I will explain in later point of time. Let's go to
One
the,
question,
yeah,
whatever we write in web config file, it will override machine config file, right?
correct.
Web config file is only for application, right?
Yes, correct. So for
Okay.
each and every application, we will have one web.config file. So in web config file, If I apply any kind of setting, that will override by the by this machine config file value. So in
Okay.
machine config file, they may mention the .NET framework as 6.4.6.1, but in our application we mentioned that 4.5. Now what the value the application will take is this value, not the web config value.
Because it overwrite or what?
Yes. So because basically see same thing, Raj here. So let's take this one. Here assume that in machine config, control chat. So assume that in machine config file, they mention this as a first configuration setting. They mention this as 4.6.1. Okay. And in web config file for the same first configuration setting, we are mentioning this as a target framework 4.1. So now our application will give the preference for the web config file only. For our application, it will first preference the value what we mentioned in the web config file. Okay, then what value will take here? 4.5 only, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why? Because it's the internal for our application. We intentionally give the target framework as 4.5. Even though in machine config file that mentioned as 4.6.1, our intentional ourselves we intentionally provide the target framework as 4.5 here. That's where our application will consider the 4.5 value instead of 4.6.1. So that's the concept apply. Assume the same reverse scenario. In our web config file, we haven't mentioned anything here. We haven't mentioned anything for our web config file. For this particular target framework, we haven't mentioned anything. Then what will happen is, as we haven't mentioned anything, this information will get from web config file, sorry, machine config file as this one. Here we may not see the information. Here we may not see the information, but internally that will work like that only. Even I haven't mentioned anything here for the target framework 4.5, the value will get from this particular machine config file. So here we only mention the two settings here. So one setting is system.web and second setting we mentioned is app.setting. In addition of these two settings, we may have 198 other settings, right? Are we mentioned all the remaining settings here? We didn't
No.
mention anything. Whatever the settings we mention, that values will not get from the machine config file. Rest of all whatever we haven't mentioned, whatever we haven't mentioned, those values will get from the machine config file. If we mention, that will override with the particular machine config file. If you haven't mentioned, those value will get from the machine config file. So that's the intention. Any question here?
So now your web config file target 4.6.1 you overwrite it or it's all
Overrided in the sense, override means it is not going to override the value. So what I mean to say
okay.
here is, so a straightforward thing. For example, we have the alphabets, right? From A to Z, we have the alphabets. So here in machine config file, assume that from A to Z we define the alphabets. A is there, B is there, C is there, and up to Z is there. Okay, we have 26 alphabets which is defined in the machine config file. But in web config file, when I take one web application, I mentioned only A, B, and M, N. 4 only I mentioned. So how many remaining configuration settings are there?
22.
22 configuration settings are there. That 22 configuration settings are needed to run the application. But for ourselves, we may not considering that values, but those are needed to run the application. Then those 22 values will get from the machine config file. Whatever the A, B, M, N, whatever I mentioned, that that application will take from the this web config file. Rest of all will take from the rest of 22 values will take from the machine config file.
Okay, okay.
So
Understood.
any questions again here?
No, no.
So how you understand Raj?
See, for one application, what all the required config files we want, we will be configuring web config file.
Yes.
Remaining config files will be in machine language.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
for the application, what all the required files we give, it will be used
Mhm.
in order that if it requires more any other than files
Yeah.
we provide, it will take automatically from machine language, machine config file.
Yeah, machine config file. But here only one correction is the configuration settings. So not configuration files. That configuration
Okay,
settings will get from the web config file.
okay.
That
So the
configuration
configuration
setting.
settings are the settings only for the application purpose only. What are settings required for our application only we are providing
We
in
are
the config
providing.
file.
So, but in
Okay.
order to run the application, we need some additional settings as well. But we are
Yeah,
not
that will be
defining those. So that we
okay.
are getting from the machine config. So that's
Machine.
where I'm saying that. So if we mention 4.5, that will override by the machine level value. So that I'm saying in that perspective, I said like overriding.
Okay.
So this is the thing, and let's move to the this section. So web
We are
form.
gonna we are gonna take another topic now.
No, no, it's not the take one more take. I'm just saying, I'm just seeing whatever I mentioned for this particular thing. The ASP.NET life cycle. So this is the important thing. Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's all for today's session then. So the still funding from the introduction is the all control things like whatever the control we have in this particular ASP.NET. So I want you guys to familiar with by taking this one. So here two ways are there to work with the control. So either in order to work with the any control, so what if you know the control name, so simply what you can do is you can write the ASP colon and that particular control name. ASP
Okay.
colon and that particular control name. And the prerequisites to use the controller, two things we need. So first thing what we need is we need ID for that. ID will help us to uniquely identify that particular element or control. So if I give the name for one control, if I try to give the same name for the another control, it will not accept. The ID
Mm-hmm.
need to be distinct value. So that ID we need to have, but while giving that ID, we need to follow some kind of convention. As it is a button, we will use BTN, and if it is representing the save operation, then we will give the meaningful name as save. Then if someone see that value, then they can easily understand it's a button and it is used for save purpose. So like every time whenever we are giving the name for that particular control, what we need to keep in mind is that representation of the control need to be in mind, and at the same time operation of that particular control. For example, if I am using this particular name, and if I just give the BUTTON1, then if I try to give this application to the anyone, and if by seeing that one they can't understand for which purpose this button is going to be used, right? We need to while giving the name itself, we need to keep it in mind, BTN, and save. Then they can easily understand. And another foremost thing, another important thing what we need is run net control, run net server. So those are two important things which we need to use for each and every control. That ID value need to be present, and the run net equal to server need to be present. Okay. So this is one way to represent the control, and another way to represent the control is go to that particular toolbox, select this one, and drag and drop here. Drag and drop here. So go to that particular control which you want to place in your form. Go to that particular control and drag and drop. And other way, third way, what we can do is even if you don't have time to drag and drop, what you can do is you can simply double click on that. It will place the control here itself. So what we can do is here, for example, here or somewhere, if we press the control and if we double click on that, automatically that control will come here.
Okay.
So that is the thing what we can able to do here. So this is the thing, basic thing, and next section I will cover you all these controls. So whatever the controls we have and what is the purpose of each control, and the same thing like what are the data controls are there, whatever the validation controls are there, those we can easily see. Okay, so that's all for today's session, Raj and Muzaffar.